thinking about what she's thinking. In fact, going back to character, you may also want to bring up in your introduction that the initial title for this book was First Impressions. And as you get a little further into it and you think about her first impressions of Mr. Darcy, Mr. Darcy's first impressions of Elizabeth Bennet, Elizabeth's first impressions of Mr. Wickham. Elizabeth is very intelligent, but she does make some mistakes in her judgment as well. Okay, and even though Mr. Darcy comes off as being a snob and insensitive, proud man, what kind of is revealed throughout the novel is that whatever he says happens to be true. And the way Wickham presents himself in his delightful, charming way ends up being deceitful. Okay, so you have to try to talk about this novel on a much higher level, psychological level. And I think that you can do that if you focus on one of the things that it may be Elizabeth Bennet's prejudice in the way that she is a pessimistic person. Let me find this quote. So this is from Elizabeth. The more I see of the world, the more I'm dissatisfied with it. And every day confirms my belief of the inconsistency of all human characters and all of the little dependence that can be placed on the appearance of either merit or sense. So what Elizabeth has, kind of what her, I guess her character flaw is partly what makes her so intelligent. Also, having a critical mind also can be sort of a bad thing too, because in one of the conversations, and she's having this conversation with her sister, in one of the conversations that Jane says, one doesn't know what to think. And Elizabeth says, well, pardon me, one knows exactly what to think. And a lot of times she's right, and Jane is naive, but not always. And sometimes Jane actually has better instincts than Elizabeth. So what you would do with these characters in an essay like an AP essay, when you're trying to avoid plot as much as possible, you really want to just talk about the psychology behind the characters and talk about them in terms of character foils, because anytime you can use a literary term and make it practical, you want to do that, because that's overall what it's asking you to do, is testing your knowledge of literary elements as well. So you want to try to talk about why the tone is important, the voice, the dialogue between what really captured people, the strength, I think, of this novel and Jane Austen's novels, is that she's able to tell you so much about the characters without even telling you very much about the characters. You know them when you see what they say, when you hear them. You know what kind of father she has. He's very witty, he's well read, and he is able to keep himself almost too aloof. Even his aloofness gets them in trouble later on. So there's a lot of ambiguous elements in discovering character. And one of the quotes you should remember is that Bingley says to Elizabeth Bennet, "I didn't know you were such a studier of character." And that's really what you're doing when you're analyzing literature. I think that's what makes it so fascinating, is if you're interested in life and you're interested in people, how can you not be interested in literature? Because it's like the art form of it coming to life. And speaking of character foils, which also brings into another theme that you might be able to talk about, is marriage. But again, you got to raise a higher question about it. one of the questions that was proposed, I think, when I was studying it in college was, is marriage more about practicality, the what do you call it? Not circumstances, convenience. Is marriage a matter of convenience? When I teach or have taught Romeo and Juliet to ninth graders, the view when you ask, do you think it's really important for the parents to like each other, to get along? Do you think that matters? And at ninth grade, and most young people would say, no, it doesn't matter. But when you get older and you start having children and you have to share holidays with your in-laws, and there's religious differences or any of those kind of differences, it does matter. It does take a toll on you. And I think that Darcy, even though he comes off as a snob, I think in a way he's trying to protect Bingley from being taken advantage of. Because we have to, at least look at their point of view of, you are just basically looked at as property as well. So it's kind of reversed. Anyways, again about character foils, Bingley, Darcy. Bingley is a lot more like Jane. Elizabeth says something about Jane, and in terms of how she always sees the best in everyone. Elizabeth says to Jane, "You are a great deal too apt to know, to like people in general. You never see fault in anybody. All the world are good and agreeable in your eyes. I never heard you speak ill of a human being in my life." One of the things that this kind of comes back, that even though Jane is seen as naive, and she probably is, she's not really a simpleton, though, what they would consider a simpleton. Towards the end, one of the things she says to her sister is that until I can have your goodness, I can never be as content. And there's a lot of truth in that statement, because Elizabeth will have a harder time finding contentment being as she is, as an intricate character, than being more easily content in life as Jane. Another character foil you could compare Elizabeth with is her friend Charlotte. And then you can point to, you don't want to just go into the details of what happens with Mr. Collins, but he is a repulsive character, right? And the idea, though, of how can you be married to somebody like that you can't stand? And Charlotte, Lucas takes a complete, realistic, during this time, she would have probably been the most realistic of all the girls, that marriage is just a matter of chance, either way. But, if this person is going to secure your livelihood, then affection doesn't matter. And it would be very hard for us today to see that, because we mostly base it on affection. But back then, that it wasn't. It was a contract, an agreement. It was a social ladder, really. I mean, it was just basically to get you where you needed to be. And that's how people lived. And so she accepts her world, but part of it is because she is more of a simple character. Elizabeth can't do that because she's highly intelligent. So there's a way to talk about the characters and being simple and the benefits of being a simple character, and I mean this in real life too, and being more complicated, a complex person. I should mention that Jane Austen also did refuse a guy who had a nice bit of property and probably would have been a really good move for her and her family. But I think, like I said before, I think Jane Austen shared more of Elizabeth Bennet's sentiments on this subject, and that's why she couldn't herself get married. She unfortunately did fall in love with somebody, um, and I don't think it would have been as promising as the other one, but he did have some property and it was comparable, I think, but he ended up dying. And so when the other proposal came, after knowing that feeling and knowing that loss, being able to say, yeah, I'll just marry this person because, it would be a good move for me financially, wasn't enough for her. Interestingly, her family, I think she was one of 8, and one of her brothers that wasn't like mentally capable as the rest went off to be a laborer somewhere. And then one of the other brothers actually got adopted into a rich family, which also seems like a very cruel thing to do, to want your son to be adopted somewhere else and be someone else's son. But this was a very good practical move, because then it's actually what helped save her in the end as far as financial security, because he ended up taking care of her. She also had a sister that I think the relationship between Jane and Elizabeth is very similar to her own sister, who was, I think, 10 years older than her. They were just inseparable when they were younger, and they are buried side by side as well. One of the things that I think, to Mr. Darcy's credit, is when Jane is over there, and of course she has a fever, and this always seems to happen in British novels. I guess people, when they got sick, it was a lot worse than it is today. But anyway, so her mother's plan of her having to stay longer works out, and Elizabeth comes there, and of course Elizabeth has to hang with these 2 sisters, and she's reading a book. And I kind of want to make 2 points about this. One is what they say about women in general, about how accomplished they have to be. And Mr. Bingley says, I don't see these young ladies have the patience to be so accomplished as they are. And the other sister comments on what one must possess. And Darcy, of course, sounds like a snob, because he acts like that there isn't, in his mind, women who are really that accomplished. But he explains with the next remark. So one of the sisters says, that this a woman must have thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, modern languages, to deserve the word. And besides all this, she must possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her address and expressions. Notice what she's talking about, besides the music and that, but the other air about her is a very superficial air. And Darcy's response to it is that she must possess something more substantial by improving her mind by reading books. That's when I fell in love with Mr. Darcy. So what you start to see, though, is what's important to him in character. No, he doesn't just want a woman who wants to marry him for money, and he's probably, the reason why he acts so rude all the time is probably because that's what he is assuming all women want from him. And what makes him actually fall in love with Elizabeth is that there is something more substantial to her. It's really her intellect. And it's also her intellect that ends up changing the social class dynamic of, I'm superior to you because I have money. What if you have more intellect, though? What if she can outwit you? Then the inferiority and the lines between the social class, now they start to blur, right? Education has always been the answer to this. This is why people did not want black people to learn how to read or be educated. That's why they didn't want women to be educated. Why? Because it threatened the society. Okay? So, I think I'll stop there and then just do another video in the volume 2, and there's volume 3. By the way, on importance of being earnest, there's a joke about the 3-volume novel, which is what you were reading. So if you haven't done a comedy yet, make sure you, that one is a very quick read, and there's and also another Colin Firth performance. The best Pride and Prejudice, I think it's not anything that they've newly made, because you can't do this movie justice in 2 hours. But there's a series on Amazon that has Colin Firth. And it was like a TV movie, and it's about 6 hours long, and it takes you through the entire thing. And I just watched it again and just like, gosh, it's just so well done. It's not like lame at all. The characters, everything is so good. And it's very close to the book. But you've got to think beyond plot if you're going to use this for the AP test. All right. And oh, one more thing. In thinking about the book, in the meaning as a whole, don't lose sight of the title, Pride and Prejudice. That will help you, whatever you want to talk about, get to the meaning of the novel as a whole. No matter what the question is, you have to still demonstrate that. So I think you can do it if you focus on characters, because they're so well developed here. All right, thanks. Bye.